Luca Nation. It's probably been, I would say, close to 500 episodes since you've gotten the cage, fully dressed up, in the office, probably going to a bleaker night type of show. So welcome back to Lucas Tigers and Bronzo Mine. Awesome episode last night. A lot of you guys loved it. And thank you for everyone that reached out and said congratulations on the Beckett partnership. We appreciate it. It's going to be a very fun year. And hopefully you guys are along for the journey with us. And just know as we go into every one of these discussions, partnership calls, we do think about you guys. So be on the lookout for free grading and things like that, events, discounts, new announcements and things like that. Looking forward to this partnership and kind of what we're able to accomplish together. Now, I want to talk about your auctions.
All right, beforehand, though, you can jump into that. But, I mean, also, big thank you to SGC, who was our partner last year. We leave SGC, thrilled with them as a company. A lot of people who listen to our show used SGC for the first time last year. Andrew does preach, flowers for people, hobby positivity. He doesn't dance as much as some of the other hobby positivity and optimism people are out there. But I do think he means what he says, and that is that if, we all grow and we grow the whole big ass hobby pie, it's better for all of us. Battle lines being drawn are not always the best thing in the world, especially when people are on the outside looking in, thinking about joining. If they see that it's just a war over a small piece of turf instead of a whole bunch of people working together to grow the map, to grow the footprint for all of us, that's not a recipe for sustained success. So that was a lot. Sustained success. See what I did there is an alliteration. So
if you guys want to know what a fight over turf could look like, I just rewatched Breaking Bad season 3, and specifically season 3. So I've watched it before. I didn't want to go back to season 1 and have all that buildup because the buildup is like best season of any show I've ever watched. Specifically, season 3 is how
I agree. But as good as it was, I just didn't like how they ended the show. Not season 3, but how they ended the show. Right. Because when you got 3, I almost was like, just finish, just be done. I'm okay. That's it. You end it there. I'm great.
End it by killing Gale. That should be the last scene.
Just done. Just done.
And
yeah. Then you got a lot of questions.
Walt and Jesse just cook for eternity.
Yeah. Or they don't. Or who knows? There's just a lot of different ways to go. It's sort of like, Sopranos. It's like, oh, what really happened there? Faded to black. So, anyway, point being, I love our listeners. No, I got a lot of texts. I got a lot of messages, a lot of congratulations about Beckett, a lot of excitement, a lot of people who have the same type of, read on it as me, which is, the hobby is better if Beckett is doing well. And that's everyone is better, right? Because I've said this to a few people. I'll throw it out there. I consider there are 3 legacy brands in the hobby. Topps. If you say Topps to somebody who's not in the hobby, they know what Topps is, right? They can tell you, oh, the Mickey Mantle card, the Topps, right? Upper Deck. People know Upper Deck. It was, it was a huge thing in the 80s. And people know Upper Deck as a company. People know the Griffey, right? And Beckett. You say Panini. I love you, Panini. I stuck up for you and took a lot of heat for, posting on my story the correction. Crazy. And sorry. But you say Panini to somebody who's not in the hobby and they think you took them about a sandwich. You say PSA and people are like a public service announcement about what? You say SGC, CGC, blah, blah, blah. People think you're having a stroke. Why are you speaking in letters? I don't know what you're doing. But those brands, including Beckett, are legacy brands. And, it matters that they are successful. So I appreciate that. I just wanted to throw that in there before we get into, all kinds of fun stuff.
Battle lines being drawn.
Yeah.
Let's say you need a haircut.
Yeah,
kind of do. It's your favorite barber, but he's on vacation. He's gone for another 6 days.
Yeah.
What do? You need a haircut today.
That's brand loyalty. So I've had this happen, right? And, there is obviously something to be said about sticking with your person. You've built up a rapport. You don't have to tell them, what to do. They kind of know what to do with your hair. You also know going in what you're going to get out of it. There is not that unknown of sitting down in a chair with a new person. But
do you lose a bit of the novelty?
Sometimes. No, not really. But it depends what you're doing it for. Most people don't want novelty in their haircut. You don't want a wild card. You know,
most people don't want novelty in their haircut all the time, but every 6 months
no,
they might want a new one. You've had that same haircut
no,
for your whole
but a new one is
with the same guy.
you have an idea of a new style that you want to give it to someone who you trust, not let me roll the dice here and sit down in a chair and say, hey, I want to refresh this. Tell me what you know what, go to town. Carve
Go to town.
So
So this is maybe the evolution.
In my head.
Maybe this is the evolution of Andrew. Normally I would roll the dice. But now I'm waiting. I don't want any more excitement. I don't want any more novelty. I just want consistency. And I wanted to get into that because I wanted to hear your take. You're your hardest critic.
I am
for sure.
I am. And we talk about this, right? Where we beat ourselves up for our losses. We don't celebrate our wins enough. That's another Andrewism. I'm laying on the Andrewisms in 2023 for you guys because it's easy to say it and much harder to actually do it. I mean, I've had a lot of wins in the hobby. And I'm not posting them on my story, but when I take an L, it's right out there, and I'm beating myself up over it and saying, "Why?"
You're also very black and white. Like Cage compares his all his L's look alike and all his W's look alike. But the reality of this game of investing, of speculating, of betting, whatever you want to call it, of taking on risk for potential future return, that's really kind of the first principles way to look at it. All of Cage's risk is the same, but from my perspective, the risk you took here with the LeBron card is completely different risk than you took with Top Shot. Any thoughts, anything you want to share before? Well, obviously, get into the NBA trade deadline. I woke up Durant to the Suns. We could talk about if that matters. Just a whole bunch of stuff going on in the NBA. We'll get to that in the later half of the episode, but I wanted to hear your thoughts, opinions while it's fresh on the oven.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll tell you, what's funny about it is, every time something like this happens where you take a risk and it doesn't pay off, at least I turn around and I get a little more introspective, right? I start to think of myself and my PC, and I start to say, okay, what is it that I love about the hobby? What is it that I love about these cards? And then you layer it down. Are there any cards that I don't have that love for? And what's funny is usually the risks that I'm taking on cards, especially the ones that don't work out, are not ones that fall into the category of a card that I love, a card that I needed to have. The hobby may consider it iconic, but it doesn't fall into a card that I'm like, all right, I'm going to hang on to that forever. And what's funny about that is I believe that if I were to sell the cards that I bought with the intent of that's a card I don't want to get rid of, those are not going to be losing propositions because I'm not the only one thinking like that. I'm not the only one thinking like, wow, that's the last one I'd sell. Or if I had to keep 5 cards, I'm moving those into those 5. Like that's what I should be doing in the beginning of the investment. When I make that risk, when I take that gamble, a lot of the things, and the reason why we talk about it this way is because, you buy a card with an intent to sell. You're not going to have that heartstring. You're not going to have that pull to it. You're not going to, so if you're buying it that way, I need to learn better that chances are it's not going to be something that people are ready to die for, right? Otherwise, 1, I wouldn't have been able to buy it the way I bought it. 2, it's not something that you're going to have multiple people saying, I need. That's a great one. I'm going to have that. So, I mean, I have a lot of fun, man. I have a lot of fun in what we're doing. I will tell you that. And, sometimes it does not work out the way you want it to. You're good at telling me I did everything right? I took the right gamble. I took the right risk. I set it up. I timed it right, you name it. And just sometimes the chips don't fall the way you want them to fall.
You've given me a compliment the other day. You're like, or no, you didn't give me a compliment. That's stupid. You asked me what my core competency is.
Yes.
And I think compartmentalizing is actually something that I do pretty well. I don't think that you do everything right, or I don't praise all of your right decisions. I'm able to segment, you bought this Manning, but you bought this Griffey, and you bought this Top Shot, and you bought this LeBron, and you bought this Ruth, and I'm able to separate all of the decisions as individual decisions versus as a group of decisions. And I say,
and it's very smart
for the right reason. This, I think, was probably reaching. This is way outside your strike zone.
So instead, I have much more emotional response to it, and you hit a loss like last night, and I think to myself, okay, let me list every card that I own, and I'm going to sell all of them.
Smart.
Just sell every single one. I'm going to just get rid of every single card I own. And then I thought, all right, well, maybe I don't want to sell these. And what's funny is
I won't give people the full, like, because some of the stuff, it's with the podcast, you do want to keep some stuff private, especially the cards you're buying and selling. You don't want to be pumping them when they're up, and you don't want to be shitting on the market when they're down.
Exactly.
So it's a really interesting line to toe. But essentially, there was a nice mid to high end card available 7 to 8 months ago. It was with one of those BGS gorgeous blue altered slabs on it. And Cage did hours and hours of research between midnight and like 5 a.m. He didn't sleep that night. The wife was like, "What are you doing, bro? Like, stop eating Chick-fil-A in the bed." He's like, "Research." And anyway, the thought was, this is either inaccurately graded or the eye appeal of a blue label might not look as good. I could do something with it. Mm-hmm. And what I think you didn't take into consideration was the market going down 50, 60%.
Correct.
So even if you were right, you could have still been wrong because the
whole market
went down.
There's the lesson. You know, and you talk about entrance
Don't catch
and
a
exits. No, you talk about like sometimes you win on your entry, sometimes you win on your exit, sometimes you got to take both into account, right? That, you know, the move that I made at the time might have been the right move, and maybe the mistake is selling now. You know, maybe it should have been held.
He swung at the right fastball. He made good contact, but there was a fucking gust of wind from center field at like 30 miles an hour.
A gust from the gods.
Held the ball up in the air and landed in the glove.
I love it. Because if you let me finish this one here, the first thing I thought of was I'm selling everything, and you went and ran with that. Smart. This is whatever. Smart. Compartmentalize the whole deal. But what's funny is as you go through the multiple stages of grief, right? And it happens in the hobby, right? Multiple stages of grief. Oh man, my Mahomes 101 didn't get paid for again. And you go through the stages, right?
What stage is going into the office? Like that's my lowest stage of grief.
You gotta work, you know. I mean,
that to me is my lowest stage of grief.
But so anyway, well, you'll get there eventually. Maybe not in office. There's hybrid jobs, but no. But after I'm selling everything. The hell with it. The hell with this hobby. The hell with this hobby. I'm out. I'm not doing it anymore. Then you start to think to yourself, okay, am I really going to sell that? What about this one? I've had this one for a really long time, and you know it's gone up. You know, and you start to like analyze what you own and why you own it. And the third part is, all right, I'm not going to sell everything. I'm going to now take this as an opportunity to kind of, you want to reorganize, you want to consolidate, you want to, you know, now take stock in what you have and learn from, well, what was the reason why this one was a loss? And then you're kind of branching it out almost like a flow chart. Are there other cards that fall into the same kind of category of these are ones I don't need? All right. Do you sell them now? Do you sell them at a loss? Do you accept the loss because you think that it's now smarter to put that money you're going to get back into something else that will recover or improve or be one of those cards that you now put in the pile of, I really want this. This is something I collect. This is something near and dear to my heart. I'm not going to be, you know, worried about fluctuating the value on this one. Is it something that you think may continue to go down? It's something that, you know, there's less value for. I mean, you have to do this kind of like reassessment of everything.
I have a question on that part.
Please.
So, and I have a question for the audience too. When you guys think of that, like should I sell this? Should I trim the fat? What should I keep? What should I sell? Do you guys keep 3 different accounts where it's cards, crypto, stocks? Or for you guys out there listening, is it one joint account? So, i.e., what I mean is the opportunity cost like, if I sell this Jordan, maybe I should put it into Bitcoin. Or if I sell this LeBron, should I buy stock ABC? Or is it I have my money for stocks, I have my money for crypto, and I have my money for cards or whatever? I'm curious how people think of it.
It's funny. I would love to hear what they say. I'll give you my answer, and I've always kept the cards separate because the cards, it's always been a hobby to me. And, you know, prior to this crazy run, I've never looked at cards like stocks. I never looked at cards like, wow, it's just another line item in the portfolio of investments, right? And I think part of that's part of the problem. You know what I mean? And, you know,
you kept the line item of you knew what it cost, but you weren't like, oh, next year this should get 30%.
Yeah, well, I always keep an item, you know, what I know what it costs. I always have to do that because I know eventually I may sell that item and I'm going to have to pay taxes on it. So you always have to keep the item just to stay on Uncle Sam's good side. You always have to know what the price is. But it wasn't like, okay, let me open up my book and I own 100 shares of Apple, I own 100 shares of Google, and I own 47 Devontae Grahams and a bunch of Fernando Tatis. Like, it was never a line item like that. Like, here's my quote investments. These were cards. You know what I mean? These were never like, okay, it's an alternate investment. That is like, talking points and language that kind of, I believe, just come up recently. I don't even think if you went back 5-6 years, you ever heard of anybody talking about a quote portfolio of their sports cards?
The reason I asked that is, if it came up recently, what I think will happen is that people are constantly evaluating, is where my money parked? Is it in the right place? What's the likelihood I get that money back? What's the likelihood it grows? And to me, the more that Cage and I have been talking, and my mom has a 401k, so she had some money. She's like, Andrew, what's a cool stock? We've talked about a stock, and Cage talked about how Verizon has 6.5% dividend. So she put some money in, and just the other day, she got like $160.
There you go.
Dividend.
Free money. Just for owning.
Right?
Just for owning. Yep. Well, you're a business owner when you own stock. That's it. That's how dividends work. Yep.
That's pretty tempting to, when you have a lot of uncertainty outside of our borders with like war and politics and all that, and then within the borders, inflation, all that stuff. And some people will be like, well, 6% is nothing because it doesn't even cover inflation. We'll talk about that. It's starting to look really tempting to park your money there in a Fortune 500 company that pays 6.5% versus taking some of these risks in modern and ultra modern cards.
Yep. So, but if you wanted to go the other way, someone who's investing in modern and ultra modern cards would say it's the same thing as investing in a riskier stock that has a potential for higher return. It doesn't pay dividends. And there are plenty of stocks out there that don't pay dividends. Google, for example. You know what I mean?
Got crushed yesterday. Did you see that?
Yeah, because of the ChatGPT. Yeah, because I guess Microsoft's AI function was.
But why even take on all of that risk, right? Like if we look at the economy,
because
the risk has grown, but I actually think that there's less upside because all the upside was captured in the last 2 years. So you still have all of that upside, but now you're layering on a daily basis economic risk, geopolitical risks, and now you're like, I just want my 6%, and I'll be at least happy that I'm not losing money. Versus,
I don't know anything about Mike geopolitics. I don't know anything about that at all. I don't know what side of the aisle he falls on. I'm just kidding. I'm a little Mike geopolitics, but
I understand. You.
I know what you're saying, and what's funny is the counter on it is, if you're going to come on here and talk about how folks can put all their investments together and make it one portfolio of investments, right? And it's your stocks and your crypto and your cards. Well, some of your stocks are probably what I would consider more aggressive or more risky. It's the same thing as cards. And some of your stocks, you were somebody who in NFTs had a very different strategy of me. You were catching the run on the way up.
Yes, I was trying to catch the momentum.
So you were like, all right, I'm a momentum player. Well, cards had momentum. Like how do you decide when it's momentum and not momentum? How do you decide, okay, this thing's already run? There are some successful stocks that continue to stay successful. I was more contrarian,
So there's two parts. So there's the cards like that we love, and then there's the cards for investment purposes. So like the Cam Reddish, not Cam Reddish, he got traded. Cam Thomas card that I bought, like the Dunris Elite, you really pop one. I liked it. I spent $135. I probably could have bought it for $90. That wasn't a card that I thought was a good investment. I was just like, I want a Cam Thomas card. I like his game. I'm okay paying $130. So that's a card I love. I don't think that's going to go up. I actually think I overpaid on it. But just in terms of investments, I think cards are actually going to be one of the worst investments in the next 12, 24, 36 months. And I don't see how there's nothing that's pointing in the direction that none of the factors that are good for cards, low supply, an increase of demand, a lot of confidence in the market, and certainty. Those three things, it's the opposite. We have a lack of confidence in the market because we don't know what's going to happen with Panini switching over to Fanatics. We have insane amount of supply hitting the market, and demand is dwindling. It's going away. It's not as much as it was at its peak. Those three things are going to drive prices lower. So from an investment standpoint, the next 12, 24, 36 months are not a great time to invest. in cards, where more than likely
Well,
everything is going to go
so a
down.
couple things. Depends on what your window is, right? Because if everything's going down, then maybe it is the time to buy. That's dip buying. There's a whole, strategy about that. That if cards are coming down now, you buy the
How
dip
did
and you
dip
hold.
buying? How did dip buying work for your LeBrons?
There was a little more to it than the dip, but you're right about that. Sometimes you can't time the market. You know what I mean? And so I understand. Trust me, I get it. If you're saying
There might
that
be
it's the
5
next
more dips, and we're on dip 2, and there's going to be 3, 4, 5.
100% true. 100% true. The one thing that I'll have to push back on you on is you said there's
Please.
two types of cards, right? There are the cards we love and there are cards we buy for investment purposes. What if I said that there is not really the two? It's just one. It's just the cards you love. And I'll steal the
Fine.
Carver Chronicles saying of, cards are worth money because we love them. Cards are not. We don't love cards because they're worth money. I probably butchered that, but you understand what I'm saying. He
It's
would
only half
say,
true, though.
why? Why is that only half
Because
true?
what happened was there was this group of people pre-COVID that truly loved cards, and because they loved them, it gave them value. But then there was a whole bunch of people that came from sneaker flipping, from mug flipping, who got $1,200 stimulus checks, who loved to sports bet, who loved to speculate, who are on GameStop. All of those people poured into the market, and they might not have loved cards, but they were just deploying cash and speculating. That's what drove the madness on top of the base layer of we love cards.
Okay. And those are the people you think are leaving. Otherwise,
I think they're running out of liquidity.
You say demand is going down, right? So those people, they came in for the last couple of years buying cards for investment purposes. They're not panning out, and they will be leaving. And guess what will be left? The people who are buying cards that they love, people who own the cards that they love, the people who won't sell those cards.
They're gonna from that PWCC Iconic 75. They're gonna be buying those sets, the people, and then all this other junk and supply is going to be hitting the market outside those sets. So if you want to invest in Kevin Durant, you're basically kind of screwed because he has so many different cards. If you want to
invest is an interesting. I want to pivot you for a second, and it's we talk about the hobby head fake. Let me throw something out there for you, and tell me whether or not you can connect the dots for me like we did. I think it's interesting that we see you had the Iconic 75, right? And those are the cards everyone's going to run for, and they put it out there. I think they put that out there as like chum in the water for the average folk, like people like me and you, to be like, all right, well, those are the cards we should be chasing. Those are the cards we should be chasing. But what's funny about it is the 84 star Jordan, is that on the Iconic list? No, right? But if you would have bought that for investment purposes before PSA started grading it, and then had it when PSA started grading it, all of a sudden that's a card that people were making money on, and Jeff Wilson bought one, right? And Jeff Wilson's out there talking about how this is expensive and it's going to be worth money. And now I look at the Iconic thing, and LeBron was on it. LeBron was there. I mean, the LeBron card, the RPA of his is a top 5 iconic card of all time, top 10. His chrome was there. You know what I didn't see on it? The chrome gold refractor. Gold refractors all of a sudden. The same people who were talking about buying PMGs and buying Prism golds, all of a sudden now there's gold refractors being bought. And there was a private sale recently of that LeBron gold refractor for $1 million. Private sale. If you guys look at whatever tracking tools you want to use, a private sale. And then this one sold in golden last night out of nowhere, PSA 10, and it sold for a lot. But I'm pretty sure that Jeff Wilson just bought one of those also, like $300,000 at the show. He did like a bunch of content. His was only a BGS 9, I think, also. But yeah, I think the hobby head fake is real. I do. I think.
So you're saying they're putting the RPA on the Iconic, and the gold is the one that's appreciating?
I'm saying there are interesting things afoot, my friend. There are always interesting things afoot, and it seems like retail is always chasing, and we're the retail.
Who's institutional?
Insiders. It seems like
Ba-dum,
we're always
bum.
buying after the fact. You know, I didn't get my Shaq
Are you sure
PMG
that
red
person that's
for
the
$3,000. Am I sure the person?
Would you have wanted to, if you own that gold refractor that ended last night, would you want it to be a buyer or a seller of it?
Probably a seller. At the price that it's at, I mean, like, you know, you're buying in at $900,000. You know, what's the appreciation of that one? You know, what do you expect that to be next time around? Plus, it was an interesting bidding in after. I mean, that was like 450, 475, 5, and then all of a sudden, boom, hit. And then 20 minutes, oh, another one hit. I don't know if it was two people. I don't know if Jim Irsay needed to have that card that time, you know, and he could put it on the Muhammad Ali belt. I don't know what wound up happening with that one, but it's interesting, you know, how it kind of changes. You know what I mean? It just and I wind
What
up
Keith is
being
saying is the LeBron market was pretty dead in last night's auction, except for one card, the gold refractor, which got a whole bunch of love and extended bidding.
and it's also the card that, for whatever reason, folks were talking about. We've seen a lot of gold refractors being posted. We saw a private sale recently. We saw sports card investor Jeff. I love you, man, but you were forefront at National with the Star, buying a PSA 8 before anybody had them, paying a lot of money for it. And then all of a sudden, you know, when this card doesn't come off for public sale that often, you didn't get a 10, you got a BGS 9, but it was big out there, big deal, a lot of promotion of it. And now there were a ton of LeBrons, not really high prices for LeBrons, except this one. So
From your comments,
Mhm.
did most people think that the RPA would outsell the gold, or the gold would outsell?
Well,
the
it's
RPA?
funny. You're one of your favorite things to say is people don't read. So what I actually wrote in my giveaway, which by the way, someone won, they were $12,000 away from the total price. But what I said, at the price they're at, which one would you rather own? Right, at the price they're at. So basically, let's think about it. The RPA sold for $228,000, and the gold sold for $900. You could have 4 of the 99 RPAs or 1 gold. The one's out of 50, one's out of 99. I know the 99 is a PSA 10, and this one was an authentic. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes in it, but nobody did never. Oh, I want. And
you got PSA snobbed on top of your PSA snob.
PSA snobbed on
you
top
guys
of the
love
PSA
your
snob.
10s. You guys love your 10s, man.
So, I mean, to me, really what I get out of it is that I feel like I need to just do the one line of buying the cards that I love, right? And not chase and not worry about cards that I buy for investment purposes, and make the cards that I love become the cards that are good investments. We got a little echo. I don't know if you're hearing that also, but
Recently?
it just started. Yeah. No, it just started. I just started hearing myself twice in my headphone, but it's all right. So, but I got to go that way because I feel like if I don't, I'm always chasing. I'm going to always be chasing my tail. I'm always going to be 2 steps behind where the money has parked itself next time around. And I know if I'm feeling that way, I'm sure a lot of our listeners feel the same way. Because it's like, go chase this, go chase that. And by the time you get there, the money has moved somewhere else. And then you're trying to chase that. It's an interesting thing, man. And it's my own problem because prior to this craziness, I was just buying Babe Ruth because I thought Babe Ruth cards were awesome. I was buying Mickey Mantle because that was a card I couldn't have when I was a kid. And guess what? Every Babe Ruth I ever bought, I still own. Every Mickey Mantle
I bought,
know
those sets.
Yeah.
You also know that card. You also know it very well.
Yep.
I don't think anyone would say you know the LeBron market super well.
No.
That's never been your.
No.
So
I definitely don't.
But back to my initial point, I actually think chasing any of these cards in the next 2-3 years is going to be a fool's errand, because maybe you'll churn out 15-20% on some winner, but more often than not, you're going to be dealt 20-30-40% losers, and not by anything of your own fault, not because you buy poorly, not because you make mistakes, because you're seeing a market losing confidence in this transition period, but also being hit with so much different supply and discovered supply too. It's not just printed from Panini. There are people who own Gazzetta Pele cards who are temporarily rolling those out, right? That's going to be a supply increase that no matter how much money I have in my pockets to buy a Pele, I won't be able to buy up every Gazzetta. So the price
because
will
that's
eventually have
another
that.
interesting story. You know, that was
There
a
are
card
going to
that
be more and more interesting stories because we saw such a huge run. And I will also make this argument, Cage.
I lost
that
80% on that card.
yes, it was an ugly copy. 2020 is also when I think the hobby went global. Ironically, we got locked down, but the hobby went global. So people started discovering cards in Brazil, in Europe, in Asia, right? The hobby was predominantly an American thing. Now you're seeing LCSs pop up in Europe. You're seeing soccer collectors all over the world. So I actually think the hobby's gone global, and you're going to have this discovery period of new cards hitting the market. I'll tell
Makes
you,
sense.
speaking of compartmentalizing, there's something I do admire about LeBron. And it's not easy to say, but I think seeing how he is with his wife, with his kids, seeing how he took all his friends from childhood and made them and helped them get up to Maverick Carter. You have Rich Paul, who went to school and like learned CAA. He went to go intern for CAA, and now he's an agent. All of like the negative stuff I said about him as a player, and I still stand by that. He's a great individual player, a terrible teammate. The guy did do right by his family and friends from childhood. So I want to give him props for that.
I don't think many people agree with your stance on LeBron. I got some great messages like, we know you're not a LeBron fan, but you did a really good job of defending him from an objective standpoint. So thank you. And I was like, all right, cool. You know, I mean, like,
what do you think the collective level of the people in the hobbies, sports, like their athleticism level or whatever level of sport they played at?
You mean what kind of athletes are they?
Yeah.
I think it runs the gamut. You know, I think you probably have some people
How many
like me who
professional
have
athletes?
no athletic ability. Professional athletes have gotten into the hobby recently. There's plenty of professional athletes, a lot of baseball players. You know, Mike Trout, he's a good athlete. He collects cards. You know,
So how many college athletes?
probably more than there were, you know, before. Probably trying to buy some of their own cards and that kind of stuff. I
How
would
many high school
imagine
athletes?
what you're trying to say here is I would imagine that, you know, the people who collect cards are probably not, for the most part, the most athletic people in the world. Is that where you're going?
Sort of, but differently. Not in an insulting fashion. They look at the athlete and they're like, I like him, I like her, versus understanding the full complexity of I like how LeBron plays. But if I was in that locker room and he's talking about trading me, I wouldn't feel so good about him as a teammate. And this hasn't happened once. This hasn't happened twice. This hasn't happened 3 times. This is a repetitive thing where it's like LeBron and the rest of the team. So you like there's like images of like AD is a little sour, or like, you know, Russ Westbrook, like LeBron's like, let's go out there and win, and Russ is like, oh, let's go out there and have fun. Like this, like kind of this friction between teammates. And I think part of it is the fact that he does these things off the court, where it's him and then the rest of the guys, and he sort of throws them under the bus.
You are Kevin Durant. You woke up yesterday morning, you were on a 5 seed. You went to sleep on a 5 seed. A 5 seed that's 32 and 22. And you woke up this morning also on a 5 seed who's 30 and 26. A worse record in a muddy West. Do you think, they have a better chance? Is it harder? Would he have had a better chance in the East of trying to at least get to the finals, even though Juggernaut's there? What do you think right now if you're Kevin Durant? Don't evaluate the trade for me. Let's not do. Put yourself in the shoes, because you're a player. You like to let everybody know that the hobby is full of non-athletes and that you play college athletics. So I think you are uniquely situated to be Kevin Durant for this. Tell me what Kevin Durant is thinking.
I think he's excited, man. I think KD loves these types of situations where he gets to play amongst superstars. It makes his life easy. It makes his life super easy. You get to play next to kind of like this generation's like Kobe in Devin Booker. And you got a perennial all-star, one of the best point guards of all time. I think a little bit overrated at this stage in his career, but Chris Paul's pretty accomplished. What I'm worried about is the pieces they gave away that to the average fan might seem like inconspicuous.
Right.
But you have someone who doesn't need the ball a lot in Cam Johnson and shoots at 40%, which is a really high level, 42% from 3, and then Mikal Bridges, who I think is the best perimeter defender in the NBA. I don't know who fills that void.
What Andrew's trying to say is, for those of you non-athletes out there, unlike him, the
Why are you
athlete,
doing this, dude?
you are fantasy sport players. And while the Suns roster looks good from a fantasy perspective, you've got Chris Paul and Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton wasn't even in the trade, and you have Kevin Durant. You have that starting 5, which you put a fantasy team together. Wow, you're going to go out there and you're going to – but in real sports, played by people like Andrew, not like me, look at me. But in real sports, you need this thing called depth. Depth. And the Suns, while improving their starting rotation, lost a lot of depth. And to make it through a playoff run, to win in the finals, sometimes that depth is the more important thing. That Mikal Bridges, that perimeter defender, is an important thing. I think I'm saying this right, but remember, I'm not an athlete. How did I do, Mr. Athlete?
You did good.
Okay, good. I did okay?
This is way different than the first part of the episode where it's much more educational, I guess you have to go into pundit role, right?
Yeah.
Like it's much more first take, ESPN-y.
Yeah, I mean, listen.
I think the Lakers won the trade. I think the Lakers got the best of all the value of all the trades.
Malik Beasley, like I said last week, boom.
You were right about that. I don't know how you were right. So let me read through some of these trades. So Kevin Durant and TJ Warren for Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, 4 first-round picks and a 2028 swap. The Lakers, in their trade with the Jazz and Minnesota, the Lakers get D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt. What's really good about – I won't talk about the other teams who are kind of like throwaway players, and Russ is probably going to get bought out. The Lakers gave up nothing and got 3 guys that actually played together on the Minnesota roster last year, and that Minnesota team was better when Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt were on the team. I'm curious, what's the excuse going to be now for Laker fans? What's the excuse now going to be for LeBron fans when they underachieve with this team?
AD's hurt still. We don't have a
that's
healthy. We don't have a healthy.
That's going to be the excuse?
Yeah, I mean the excuse. They don't need an excuse. They can't win. The West just got a lot of the other teams got better. I mean, you added Kyrie and KD, who were both on one team in the East, and are now in the West. You know what I mean? So you have more top line talent that makes it a tougher gauntlet. Does that mean that I think Dallas or Phoenix are going to be finals favorites? No. But at some point in time, the Lakers would have to run through those guys, and the Lakers don't exactly have depth either. So if you have a matchup between those teams, they just got.
If the Lakers don't beat the Mavs, it would be pretty embarrassing for the Lakers with this roster.
Yeah,
the Lakers should have every piece that they need to win a championship.
Guys, clip it. LeBron doesn't make his team better, but now the Lakers have every piece that they need to win a championship. So
have you got a chance to watch? I mean, you have because you talked about it, Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt.
Perfect fit on both fronts. From a contract perspective, from a play style perspective, they are perfect. That's why I thought that was going to be the trade. Perfect fit. I think
you got your scoring point guard in D'Lo. You got someone who could stretch the court for LeBron.
And this is not players that need the throne. They're not players that need the headlines. They are players who will fit their role. They're players who should play the role that you got them in there to play and let LeBron do his thing. So, yeah, I mean, you would think. But do you think that they now are the best team top to bottom in the West?
This is my confusion with LeBron. This is the frustration and excitement. Like, we always talk about him turning it on, right? Mm-hmm. We never talked about turning it on with Jordan because he was always on. Mm-hmm. Whenever he played, he was always on. I don't know what LeBron wants for the rest of this season. If you take last game as an example, he wants stats and accolades more than winning. But that could easily change now that he has 3 new guys. He might be invigorated. He's like, we finally got this cancer in Russell Westbrook out of our locker room. This is our team. We could do something. I don't know, Cage. What's your intuition say?
I know there was one big loser this offseason.
Who's
tremendous
that?
loser this offseason. And it is my son. Because
all the
his
jerseys.
Rui Hachimura jersey on the Washington Wizards, he won't wear anymore. His Kyrie and KD jerseys on the Nets, he won't wear anymore. So, I mean, he was surprised about the KD trade. He woke up this morning and said, what are the Nets doing? Then we read it. And he said, "Oh, they had to give up Warren too. Like that's a big piece." Ian
Got
says.
4 first
I
round
think,
picks.
then we went, and he goes, "All right, okay." And that's a good. If they do the right thing, they can really rebuild. They really rebuild around the right players because he likes Dinwiddie. But yeah, I mean the Nets are going to be irrelevant for a little while. I got a little prediction for you, Russell Westbrook. I think he goes to the Heat.
I'd like him to go somewhere here where he's finally respected for the player he is. What's annoying to me about Westbrook is we knew what Westbrook was his entire career. He's never changed. He may have gotten less efficient, but he's always been the exact same style of player. And then you're going to bring him into teams. He's going to do what he needs to do or what he does, and you're going to criticize him for being that player. Like that to me was pretty lame. That was pretty.
So quick before we go, because we're going to wrap it up here. Cam Thomas. We would be remiss as a daily show to not talk about Cam Thomas. Fun to watch. This guy. He put up more in a 3-point spread than any net ever in the NBA. I think Rick Barry might have done it more in the ABA. Kyrie had 132 over a 3-game stretch. That was one of the games. He had 60 in one of those games, or 62. So nice 3-game stretch. Well, Ian and I talked about it, and his friends were, well, Cam Thomas. It's got a lot of insanity vibe to it. There was no one there, and what we said was, wow, when Durant starts playing again when he's healthy, is this guy going to score? Now Durant's not there, but they are bringing in other starting pieces. Cam Johnson is going to actually get some real run and could probably turn into a pretty nice player with an opportunity to play.
Great fit there.
So the Cam Thomas, do you watch the game throw? Because I watch the games. In the third game, he had 30 points at the end of the third quarter, and he was still sitting with 30 points with like 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter in a very close game, in a game that was not decided. And instead of points, what I saw him have were a lot of turnovers.
Yeah,
and I mean, look, he was playing against Chris Paul. So, let's make sure we're not saying he's not playing against like a hobby person who's not an athlete, like Andrew would say. He was playing against Chris Paul. He's clearly an athlete, somebody who can strip the ball from an NBA player. But he looked lost at times, and really forcing, and no one else on the Nets. Like, I can't even name who was Royce O'Neal. Like, literally no one else shooting. And at the end of the game, he got over 40 because every time they were trying to get him over 40. Every single time. It was like, all right, now the fouls are coming. Make sure you get the ball into him. Foul him this way he can score and get above 40. It was like a concerted effort to do it. They almost pulled the game off, and they got within 3 at the end there, and it just didn't work out. But
how does that happen? What do I think is going to happen with him the rest of the year?
Yeah.
So, last night, the Celtics beat without Al Horford, Marcus Smart, and Robert Williams, and actually Jaylen Brown went out at the end too with a broken face. Beat the Sixers. Mm-hmm. And the reason that they beat the Sixers is they actually have an established offense. Malcolm Brogdon's fantastic, but the point is they have an offense that they run. The team runs the offense, and everyone fits into that. Mm-hmm. What's going to happen with the Nets is they're not going to have an offense. Basically, the whole entire roster is different. So it's a whole bunch of iso ball. It really was iso ball and high pick and roll with Kyrie, KD. Cam Thomas is just going to do the same thing. They're not going to have time to establish an offense at this point in the season. So for the next, 30 games, he's going to go off. He's going to have games where they're like 10 and 33 shooting. He's going to have games where he catches fire and he goes, 17 for 25 with 40 points. It's going to be a bunch of iso ball where he gets a lot of shots. And they'll see by the end of the season what they really have with Cam Thomas. Is he a pure scorer? Is he a pure scorer that could actually play make? Does he have that? We'll see. We haven't seen him play. What I like about him is even though he's young, he has the frame, the speed. He turns his shoulders and he shoots really well. I think he has the physical tool.
I mean, you've just given us the title for the show. Cam Thomas scoring so many points. Cam Thomas is so hot. Andrew says he has to ice those balls.
All right, Luca Nation, no trade talk, a whole bunch of cageisms, and apparently I took a shot at all you guys who are lazy, fat, and
I didn't say lazy or fat. You just did.